welcome to the podcast, Francesca Bassa. As a member of the U.S. national fencing team, Olympic hopeful for the upcoming Los Angeles Games, full ride Stanford graduate, and in addition, a marketing mastermind at Microsoft. Such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, V. I'm so stoked to be here.
Amazing. So where do we begin? There's so many interesting facets of you that I'm almost like, what should we double click on first?
Well, I can give a little bit of background on me, and then you can tell me what direction would be fun. So I have been fencing since I was 8 years old. I started to find success around 12, 13, and I also joke with people. Sometimes things are a slow burn. The first 2-3 years I was fencing, I don't think I won a single match, but I loved it, and I was completely undeterred. I was very divorced from the results. I was just focusing on having fun. And then my coach and we kind of co-created this fencing style that really fit me, and I started to really, really excel. I hopped on to the junior national team when I was 15. A few years later, onto the senior national team. All throughout that time, I was in high school, doing classes, like living during the day a normal high school life, and at night I was training 3-4 hours a night. It was the most exhausting period of my life, but the hard work paid off. I got into Stanford University with a full fencing scholarship, so it permitted me to go to university for free. And also I had the possibility to study under some of the most interesting professors in the world and amazing classmates. So while at Stanford, I was competing still on the national team. I was also doing the full NCAA circuit. And I was occasionally attending class, like in between those two things. And towards the end of my college career, I started to realize, I'm like, oh my God, okay, I have this amazing safety net at Stanford that was really empowering me and giving me all of this support and resources and just this incredible environment of fun and safety that it was one of the most defining periods of my life. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to graduate and I need a job. Like I've never had a job in my entire life. I've only ever done sports in school. I don't know anything. I don't have any practical skills. Like no one would ever hire me. I'm also like a self-described, like I am not a numbers person. I have no technical skills, or at least at the time I definitely didn't. I couldn't even wouldn't have even known how to open an Excel spreadsheet. I was at Stanford where everybody was a CS major, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's no hope for me. And but after about maybe 6 months of total panic, I was like, okay, well, I have to solve the problem one way or the other. So I just thought about, when I was figuring out my early career, I said, well, what are the things I have no idea what I want to do in my life, but what are the things I do know that are kind of constraints for me? Because I think something that I don't hear people appreciate enough is how much creativity comes as a result of constraints. So when you have a limit imposed on you, or a need to do something, or a really strong dislike or a like of something, those are constraints. And so I figured out my senior year of Stanford, going into it, what my constraints were around a job. And the first constraint, as I told you, is I was like, I cannot do anything technical. And I defined what that meant for me. I said, anything that involves a number is off. There's no way. Like that's beyond. I had a funny job experience interview where they asked me to do like a calculation in front of them. And it was the most, I bombed the interview totally, but it was like they were trying to help, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I think it was like, it was something.
You just gotta like be funny at that point. You're like, 1 + 1 = 3.
I don't even know if I think because also I was nervous. It was the type of thing. It was just, they asked me to write an Excel function. I didn't even know what that was. And I was like, I was guessing. So anyhow, thankfully didn't get that job. It wouldn't have been the right fit. But one of my constraints was nothing technical. That means no numbers, no spreadsheets, nothing beyond Microsoft Word. That's like an email. That's the limit. The second thing I figured out is I knew at the time I wanted to stay in the Bay Area. I had a great network there. I really loved the Bay Area. I loved Stanford, and I didn't feel ready to leave. The third constraint is because I was at Stanford. When I had this full scholarship for fencing, I had all of these benefits as an athlete that were extremely valuable to me. So I had a different type of health insurance. If I got sick, I could go to the athlete, medics
Got
versus the
perks.
regular ones.
Yeah.
I had, everything was paid for. My books were covered. I had a stipend also to do some, to purchase some additional things that I might need. And I really felt safe and supported. And I was like, I don't really feel like working for a startup where it seems to me like you don't really get that same level of, it seems like it's a lot more variable in terms of what you might get paid and the benefits you might get. And also, like, a lot of times people ask you to work for their startup to kind of chase this idea that it might become a unicorn, you might make a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And to me, that just seemed like gambling. And I said, well, if I'm going to bet on something here, I'm going to bet on myself. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I've ever been interested in betting on. So I said, okay, I'm not interested in working for a startup, unlike lots of people at Stanford. I said, unless it's my own, I'm not going there. If I'm going to work for somebody else, it's going to be a big company. So I was like, okay, cool, big company. And I knew I wanted to be in the Bay Area, so that means tech companies. So I said, okay, big tech company in the Bay Area with, and the role has to be non-technical. And then I was like, is there anything else I want? And I think this was my first exercise in full-on manifestation. I thought about it and I just said, well, yeah, I actually, I've never had a job where I've made any money. I'd love to make like enough money that I feel comfortable, that I can put down my credit card and not feel fear.
What does that feel like 200K, like 150K, 100K?
At the time, I was a senior in college, and I didn't have a number in mind when I said that. I just, in my head, I was very specific. I just said, I never want to think when I put down my credit card. I never want to have to do that math. And so, and then the last thing that I remember I specified was, I said, I want the flexibility to continue fencing at the high level, at the international level, at the national team level, the level that where I was at, because my dream in fencing, I said, I want to win the Olympics someday. And I can't have a job that requires me, to be in an office for 12 hours and have no flexibility. So I was clear those were my constraints. And then I just started applying to jobs. And actually I ended up I was applying to pretty much any tech company with a non-technical role. And I started to actually, once I started interviewing and getting a few of these, early stage steps in the career process, I started to kind of think more about and realize once you start interviewing, you figure out what do you actually like, what do you not like. And I ended up landing an internship at Microsoft. And Microsoft was a company I never would have considered because I, at the time, and I still am, I'm like an Apple person. I have an iPhone, I have a Mac. Like I used Microsoft Office. That was about the extent of my Microsoft experience.
Wow, that's some old school of you.
I know that was really, and even that I was like,
in like middle school with my Microsoft Word, typing my like assignments on it, Yeah,
I'm just like, I've opened that program before. I can do that. We were speaking about money, and I don't know if I probably am not allowed to disclose what my starting salary was, but I can tell you it was by far the most competitive salary I was offered. And actually I can compare it to, I had another offer or almost offer on the table from Google. And the difference was like almost twice as much for Microsoft. Wow, so just in the base salary. So I appreciated that. And I really think if you want to get the best talent, you have to offer a competitive package. Mm-hmm. And if you can't offer competitive salary, you have to offer something else that's really, really compelling. But if you're a big tech company, you can offer competitive salary. So I think Microsoft was just very straightforward with me. They gave me a really, really amazing offer. I've never seen that much money. I'd never seen that much money in my life. So I was like, shocked and ecstatic. and then I started working there, and that's where I started my career. And I was started off doing product marketing based in the Bay Area in the Palo Alto office. Mm-hmm. And I was on the consumer side of the business. So Microsoft makes a lot of money with business to government, B2G, business to business, B2B, with their Azure cloud, with a lot of their databases and AI services. But I actually worked on the B2C, the consumer side, which is the smallest part of the kind of Microsoft's total business. But it's also one of the most interesting places to start your career because consumer marketing, it's the most challenging. You have to appeal to people, and people might not care what software their company needs to buy. They want what they want. So it was a really fascinating way to start off my career. And I was there for 5 years, working on different products within the Office consumer portfolio, probably most notably Skype and then later Microsoft Teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super interesting. I remember, honestly, I loved your lucid dreaming era where you were an experienced designer and kind of took a break from corporate and just went down the rabbit hole of all of your different interests. And yeah, I'm curious to hear more about what did you learn in your lucid dreaming era of creating experiences for people, and why did you kind of lay that era to rest to return to Microsoft?
Yeah, so I left Microsoft in 2019 for a few different reasons. One of them was I wanted to take a career break and focus on fencing full-time for about a year. Then COVID happened and that extended kind of that career break a little bit longer. And I started to think about, okay, I need to start working again. What are different things that I could do? And something that is kind of standard if you work in tech is this concept of user experience design, or UX and UI, which means how does an actual person interact with the technology or a product. And there's really, if you open any type of app or your iPhone or your computer, whatever, you'll see that there's like a flow that people go through, and there's a way that when you touch a button, there's a feedback that you get. There's you swipe right or left. Like, why is a swiping right meaning why does swiping right mean one thing or swiping left mean the other? There's this whole process, and it's very, very well studied. There's like whole teams at big companies and even not big companies that focus on this. And I noticed with a friend of mine from Stanford, we're like, why doesn't anybody apply this same methodology to real life experiences? And we were noticing, like, you know, as nice as it is to have like the Uber app work great or whatever whatever you're using on a screen, what's really cool, what you remember real life experiences. So we decided, well, let's see if we can improve real life experiences. So anything from a restaurant to an art gallery to a conference to a party to an education, using this same methodology. And so we basically started off, we called it user experience design. And we started off kind of by accident, and which is how we ended up crossing paths. We started doing different events and experiences for various Web3 companies, because at the time there was a big
budget there.
There was lots of budgets that needed to be spent, nice. And everybody was kind of competing, doing different events, trying to outspend each other, but nobody was actually creating a good experience. All these events sucked. They were horrible.
All the Web3 crypto events where it's like 80% dues, and they're just like, oh, look at my ape, like it's so
and
cool.
No one thought about it. And now, by the way, there's some exceptions. Speaking of apes, actually, I think Bored Ape Yacht Club overall did one of the reasons they were so big is their experiences, the actual concerts and things and special events that they would throw for their members were top tier because they really invested in it. They thought about how to make people feel special, but they were one of the very few groups that did that. So I want to make sure I give them credit because I think Yuga Labs did a great job. But there were so many other people that were looking for a differentiator. So that's what my business partner and I started doing. And it was one of the most interesting experiences for us to also to dive into this space that we had relatively little experience with and to come at it with a different perspective.
What surprised you about human psychology by doing that? For specifically the crypto Web3 enthusiast community?
I think, well, in general, what's interesting about user experience design, which is just thinking really what it means is how does a person interact with an experience? What is their experience like? How could you make it better? And you think about it from like step 1 to step A to step Z, every point in their customer journey, like where are they going? What are they feeling? How can you improve that? And what we found is very few people, they say they want that, but very few people are actually interested. Most people want an outcome. They want somebody to spend a lot of money, but they don't actually care about the experience. And it was really illuminating for us because we started to work with basically anybody that wanted to work with us. We were excited to work with them. And then after a while, we started to be a little bit more discerning and say, we don't actually share the same values as this company, even though they want to hire us and give us a great contract. We have different values about what a good experience is. They're not really interested in the experience like we are. And it's not fun for us to work on something where the values aren't aligned. So we got a lot more discerning with who we work worked with over time. And to be fair, I think that would have applied to any industry, but that just happened to be the industry we were in.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I definitely think that, I mean, from my personal experience, it can be very hit or miss in that sector. And crypto Web3 is also very male dominated. So I noticed there was a lot of models and just women being paid to be at some of these events. And a lot of I noticed a lot of them, they just didn't really land for me personally. There were a few good ones that I went to, but that was more private curated events that happened to be hosted by crypto millionaires or people who were more crypto forward, but they weren't public facing events. A lot of the public facing ones that I went to were it was like a little cringe,
Yeah. And, in defense, though, I guess in defense of Web3, I think that actually applies everywhere. If you go to most concerts, most parties in LA or elsewhere, most whatever, they're all kind of mediocre to bad. There's very few people that do a really good job. And those are the people, I think, that whether they call it user experience design or whether they call it something else or whether they do it naturally or they've hired somebody to do it, they have thought about the customer journey and what they want out of the entire experience. They've thought about each stakeholder. How can you make everybody feel good and feel special and what the goals are? And it's another example actually of somebody that does that really well is Stanford University, where I went to college. It was the most formative experience of my life. And part of it is because somebody, and I don't know who, maybe several people have thought about how can we make Stanford different than Harvard, than Princeton, than MIT? What do we want people to do at the end of this? How do we want them to feel at the end? And then they reverse engineer the experience to all align to that. And it's one of the best things ever.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential bringing different people together and bonding over these experiences. And one of the interesting opportunities has come across my plate recently. I moved actually from tech into finance into family office about a year ago, and then I've just met a lot of different people, and like family office is this fascinating sandbox where you kind of just do what you want, invest in areas that are interesting. Like there's less rules and boundaries, I would say. And I was recently approached by a friend who's in this world, and he's like, all right, I have an interesting mission for you. And we want to bring together 10 people over the course of 3 days, multiple times a year, maybe like 5 times a year. We have a budget of 80 to 100 grand a day for these 10 people. Could be anybody, could be anywhere, could be anything. Put together, design these experiences that you think would result in these 10 people bonding the most and actually wanting to collaborate with each other in different ways. And I thought I was like, yes.
That's a dream project.
Like, let's go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I have a perspective on how to do that.
We'll brainstorm together. We'll brainstorm together.
We can brainstorm together. Yeah. But yeah, I think, look, the cool thing about experience, the people that get it. And it's like it's like finding someone where you speak the same language. It opens up like a whole new world of possibility. And I think you can really spot the companies that get it, the players that get it, and the people that get it over time. And it's a great filter for your network.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, like you've balanced your career, which has had many different phases with fencing, and you've, performed multiple times aiming for the Olympics. What do you feel is going to make this upcoming Olympics different for you? Like, why do you feel like this is finally going to be the one where you rise as, where you win? Like, I'm curious, like, what athlete mentality is just like simmering in your brain to get you there?
Oh, totally. So the interesting thing is I've had I've had an amazing athletic career. I've been on the national team since I was 15. I'm a U.S. national champion. And actually, I've won the U.S. national championships in every age category up until seniors, which is the adults. And I've won that too. I got a full ride to Stanford for fencing. I've been on world championship teams. I have a medal from the Junior World Championships, a bronze medal. I have a bronze medal from the Senior Pan American Championships. I've had like a really amazing career that I'm really, really proud of. The one thing that's it's always been my big dream that's still missing from my career is the Olympics. And I've gotten to varying degrees very close. I was the alternate for the 2016 Olympics in Rio. And I did that while I was working full time. I couldn't afford to take a year off like all my competitors. So I negotiated with Microsoft to say, hey, can I travel and like work from South Africa or Dubai or wherever my competitions were? And they're like, okay. Fortunately, I had a supportive manager. And the company was very supportive. But basically, I was waking up, at 6 a.m. I'd go to training for 2 hours, go to work. Then I would go again, train 2-3 hours in the afternoon. I was flying to Texas to take additional lessons and training. And it was a very stressful, a very intense year. But basically, I think what's going to make the difference is there's like one of my favorite quotes, and I'll have to find who said it, but there's a difference in life between wanting something and deciding. And the Olympics and the Olympic medal is something I've wanted for so long, but I think I always removed it from myself. I always said, no, I'm not there yet. I'm not at that level. I can't, there was a block there. And what honestly has helped me move past the block is failure. This last Olympics, there was an Olympics that just happened this summer in Paris, and I tried very hard to make the team, and I have literally never performed worse. Like in any season, even injured, like I've never really choked like that.
Dang, you had an injury?
No, I wish. Like I had an injury for the Tokyo Games. I can not blame it on that.
Do you feel like it's worse when you're facing failure and you don't have an injury, because then it's just like there's nothing to be like, oh well
yeah. I mean, that was the thought ran through my mind. The thought definitely ran through my mind. It was like, I actually can't blame this on anything other than myself. And usually, by the way, if you like fail at something, it's usually not one reason. There's usually several reasons. And so I had a little bit of time to decompress and to analyze them. But fundamentally, the biggest problem for me in this last Olympic cycle is how afraid I was to fail. How much, because I didn't have any excuses. I was like, okay, I have the resources, I have the support, I've like built this system up for myself. I'm in a city I love, I'm in a training environment that I love, I'm healthy. Like, doesn't mean you don't have little challenges, but overall I was like, oh no, what if I just like can't do it? And then I totally didn't do it. But the amazing thing is after doing that, I thought about it and I said, oh, okay, that wasn't pleasant, but was that really that bad? Do I feel any less of a winner now than I did before? And I'm like, no, I'm great. I have great friends. I have a life that I've created for myself that's amazing. And I'm a great fencer. I had a bad season. But is that really that bad? No. And it really freed me up to say, if I'm going to go for this again, and I think I will, I don't want to fence a whole season worrying about failing. Who cares? I don't care at all. I just want to go. Why do I want to win the Olympics? Because the Olympics is the hardest, and this has been studied actually in psychology. It's like the hardest thing you can do. That is, it's the highest level of stress, basically, you can take on psychologically as a human, short of being in like mortal combat. So short of somebody like firing at you in an active shooter situation, it's the highest level of stress, the Olympic Games. And how beautiful to be able to do that. Like how fun to be able to play a game that's like that
you want
intense.
To be pressure cooked.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, life is all about we were talking about experience and designing experiences. Why does experience matter? Because experience is that's the most important thing in our lives. When we're on our deathbeds, we look back on our experiences, our great loves, our great accomplishments. And the one thing, consistently people regret is not experiencing enough. And, not everybody is in the position to experience the Olympics. It requires a certain level of skill and work and timing to make it work. I'm in the position to experience it. And also, not only do I want to win for my own, my own ambition, something I love that I've noticed in sports that I think applies to business, it applies to life, is there's so many different styles of winning. There's so many different, like, there's no one clear path to how you get the medal or how you get the IPO or whatever the goal is.
It's so deeply psychological.
And you have to figure out the style that works for you. And in my case, I think the style that works for me, that's the most fun, is playing and coming in with this attitude of mischief and coming in with this attitude of, ooh, let me see what I can do to just absolutely like mind break everybody.
The pot, baby.
I want to stir the pot. I want to have fun. And I think what's also working in my favor, honestly, and I look, everything in life is the story you tell yourself, so you might as well pick a good story. And at least the story I've chosen, and I think again, eventually every story you tell yourself enough comes true. What's working in my favor is these next Olympics are in LA. If I'm being totally honest, if the next Olympics were not in LA, and we're in LA now, I live in LA, I love LA. I love this city. I love California in general, but I love Los Angeles. And I also love performing in front of people. I'm a performer. It gives me energy. At work, I volunteer for every presentation, everything I can do, anything that puts me in front of people, totally. I will do.
You're a good host. You make tons of fresh Italian food. Yeah, like make the pasta.
It gives me a lot of positive energy. I'm my best self when I'm performing. And so I don't think I can resist the opportunity to perform on that stage in the city that is like my home, in front of people I love, and be the type of player that I want to be. And I want to do it without any fear and just having fun. Because you know what? As big of a deal as this seems in the moment, this is just one of many of life's experiences. And there's a finite amount of time that we have here, and life is too short not to go for it. So to answer your question, difference between wanting and deciding, I've stopped wanting it, I've just decided.
Music to my ears. Well, I'm excited to make it a point to come to LA to watch you perform in the Olympics.
Do it. I'm going to host the biggest party after.
That's awesome. So how are you able to, it's honestly like hearing you talk, you're obviously such a busy person. You're balancing out like very nuanced skills with precision, both in your career and also in your sport, and doing them at mastery levels. How do you have time for love?
Well, you have to love what you do. So
romantic love.
Romantic love. Okay. Well, I think it's all kind of one and the same. But well, I think about it. I don't want to just date anybody. I want to date somebody who's alive and who's ambitious and who has hopes and dreams and things they're going after. And I think there's nothing more fun. Also, there's always time. You can always make time for something important. And and I'm guilty of this, by the way, when I say I'm too busy to do something. I'm never too busy to do something. I can always make the time. It's that I've chosen a different order of priorities. And I think if you meet somebody that's really amazing and alive, and being with them gives you energy and inspiration, of course you make time for them and they make time for you and you make it work. So I don't see it as in any way an obstacle. I see my lifestyle and my goals and my personality as an amazing filter, because again, I don't want to be with anybody. I want to be with somebody who matches me, who is aligned in my values, ambitions, and who adds to my life.
So I'm curious if that makes a lot of sense. And of course, like if you're someone that embodies excellence and appreciates it, you want to be met by someone who has those same values. But in terms of time, how do you source, these types of people if, throughout the day you're busy working or you're busy training? Like, how do you have the actual capacity for going in person and meeting people? And I assume you're probably not dating on dating apps because
so I have a strong philosophy on this. I think dating apps are loser energy. Like it's look, statistically, you could meet somebody anywhere, but oh my God, no, I think dating apps are abhorrent. I think it's nobody goes on a dating app and feels good. And I know this because my roommates are on dating apps, so I can confirm. But no, I don't have the time. I don't have the time, the interest, the energy. I don't think it's positive either. I can't also, I know if within 5 minutes of meeting somebody, if there's an attraction, I can't know that on a dating app.
Yeah.
So I don't even bother. And now I will make time if somebody, I've gone on blind dates before that friends have set me up with somebody because I trust my friend. They thought about me. They thought about the other person. It might work, it might not, but like I give that way more credence than, a swipe here and there. So that's the first thing is I don't waste time on crap. I think it's important. Second of all, I think the biggest, you can meet somebody anywhere.
Totally.
What's really important is it's to have the energy of being open. So I remember actually a guy I dated for a while. We met at a party and it was the type of thing we walked in, we looked at each other. It was like kind of instant chemistry and we had a lovely evening chatting. And then he asked me out, later that night. And then we started going out. And we realized after about a month of going out that we had actually met a month before. We actually met at that party at a different party. And I remember going to that party and I remember I was like, I think I was in the middle of a training cycle and I had a lot going on, or I was sick, or something was up. And I remember I took a really long nap. I rolled into the party late. I was really just kind of discombobulated.
Yeah, you weren't on it.
I wasn't on it, and I was thinking, and I had all these things that I was worried about, that I was thinking about for me, some personal things, some professional things, and so I was not open. I wasn't looking, and I swear I even met him. I remember being introduced to him later. And I just said hello, and there was no spark, no connection, nothing, because I wasn't looking. I wasn't open. A month later, I walked into the room with an open attitude and open eyes, and immediately I see somebody that I'm like, wow, what a great guy.
Yeah, it's honestly very interesting. I've talked to a lot of women about this, and a lot of women have told me that if they don't feel physically beautiful at the time, or if they don't feel like they're compelling, then it won't register to them potential options in the space. They're just
so interesting.
Off.
Probably, yeah.
And it's been actually, now that I feel like I'm in the Olympics, I'm in the Olympics of my fertility.
Yeah.
Being 28 years old and realizing mathematically, obviously I wish there was infinite amount of time to date and explore and this and that, but mathematically there's not. And just facing that truth. Yes, medical science getting better, IVF, blah, blah, but realistically it's still not infinite. And there is an asymmetry between the time men get versus women. And so just being very intentional and clear on recognizing that math, I've realized okay, these connections count, these connections matter. And I started pushing myself to become very uncomfortable talking to guys or maybe even making the first move when I thought I looked not good. I remember being on a train to Amsterdam and my hair was slicked back. I don't really wear makeup, but I don't know. I felt like my skin was dull. I'd been traveling all day. I was very tired. I was just wearing all black travel clothes. Was just kind of dealing with logistics the whole time. So I was just in this mindset. And I remember seeing this very attractive guy come up behind me when the train slowed. And I was like, whoa, where did he come from? And I just almost impulsively got off the train. He was the only person standing there, and I walked right up to him and I was like, how do we get out of here? And he's like, let's figure it out. And that ended up being one of the most profound connections I've ever experienced. We had such insane chemistry, and I found out this guy he was such a hidden gem. He looked we looked around the same age. He looked like he could either be a college student traveling for the summer, maybe he just looked so what's the word? Unassuming. And I find out this guy's a math super genius, designed these algorithms in his PhD, pitched it to a super billionaire, was seeded $100 million for a hedge fund, and has scaled it 10x in 3 years. And he's 28. I was just oh my God, my sapiosexual sides are just maxed out right now. And he was attractive. So just the ability to bridge that connection and not let this barrier of, oh, I'm not looking a certain way, I'm not I don't feel that hot right now and this and that, just not letting that stop me led to one of the most profound connections that I've ever made with a complete stranger. And then it just inspired me to, anytime you just got to strike while the iron's hot. Life is so short and precious. And it's just so important to not let opportunities slip by based on like mental constraints.
Oh, 100%. And also, I think something you touched on that I love is I have an expression that I say. My business partner is always like, don't say that to people we don't know well. But it's that, which I've definitely done before. But
gotta be yourself.
Yeah, you gotta be yourself. I've scared off some VCs, but no, I'm teasing. But the line is really, life is too short for bad food, bad sex, or a bad time, because these are the most critical experiences we have in life, and you can't always control for like every single one being amazing, but over the course of your life, if you make certain decisions and you're intentional, you can. And I think, of the three, you can control how you're eating pretty well. You can control your experiences. You can be more intentional over time. And when it comes to sex, how do you control for sex? Well, I think the secret to great sex is connection. It's not focusing on the sex, it's focusing on connecting with somebody. And I think it comes from an energy and it comes from an openness. And you can find it with anybody at any time if your eyes are open and your heart is open. So yeah.
Do you feel like, as a high-performing woman who's very busy, it's more valuable to have long-term, like, lover, romantic partner, just so that you're not having to go out and, like, kind of find these fits on the fly?
Well, I really believe in this. I don't believe in going out and chasing guys. I don't believe in making the first move. I don't believe, for me, I don't, if anybody makes the first move, whatever, if that works for you, you're happy, go for it. If I have to make the first move, if a guy doesn't have the balls to ask me out, like, what else can he do? So I have just learned, and I know this from experience because I've A/B tested a little bit, but I know for me, I want men to come to me. I don't want to hunt guys down. Now, that doesn't mean you stay in the room with the door shut, like on the computer all day. No, you go out into the world, you make eye contact, you smile, you have open energy, you keep your eyes out, you say hello to somebody. But yeah, I think at least for me, live your life the way that you want to live it, aligned with your values and your ambitions and your goals, and the right people will find you. And I think there's nothing more expensive in the world than being in the wrong relationship. And this is true, by the way, of friendships. This is true of people you live with. This is true of people you work for, or business relationships. And it's the most true of romantic relationships, because that's the most intimate relationship. So I think whether it's somebody that you're seeing casually or somebody that's a long-term boyfriend, it just depends on the quality of the relationship. Not all relationships are meant to go forever, and that's fine. But I don't think about it in terms of, I need a long-term boyfriend because it's more convenient for my lifestyle. No, I need the right relationship and the right man at the right time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
No man. Sometimes that's the right. That's the answer.
For sure. I've just noticed the more I've progressed in my career, I've just become more physical. Like, the more that I have to be buttoned up in a room, like, performing. And I think as a woman, especially in business, you have to be articulate. You have to be, like, all the different nuances, like the eye contact, like knowing how to talk about certain things, like being able to negotiate in real time, knowing how to find indicators in conversation that you can then see, like, different intentions regarding deals. Like, it's just such a different art as a woman. And I notice the more that I'm kind of in that space and that mentality, the more I have to decompress from those, whether it's business meetings, conferences, gatherings. Sometimes it's gatherings with just like a very select, high stakes, like just dinner with select people where I know I can potentially move a deal forward or spark something in that time. The more I'm in those situations, the more I need to decompress physically. And the more I feel like, it's interesting, I feel like being a better businesswoman has actually connected me more with my sensuality and my sexuality in ways I could have never expected. And I know, like, in our current world, there's just a very strong divide between, like, women who present in business and women who are more open about those kinds of things. But I think just owning my femininity as a businesswoman, it's really made me face and realize, like, I feel so much more clear when I recognize my sexuality, and my sensuality is a very important part of myself. And there is a correlation between my performance being this version of myself, and how I grow in this other area of my life too. And of course, like, I don't blend the two. Like, I'm very picky. You can't mix business and pleasure. But
Usually.
They are, yeah, there is like a fascinating correlation with like the more that I succeed, the more I'm like, okay, like I just want to like, weightlift and like have sex and, play on a beach and just like do jujitsu and box and dance and like just be physical.
Well, a couple points on that. I think what you're describing, that's the feeling of being alive. And remember, we were chatting earlier, so that's what I look for in a man, somebody who's alive, because that's how I am. And I'm that way, not because I was born that way, but because of my lifestyle. Because when you have a goal you're chasing, it makes you more physical, more ambitious, more alive in other areas. A really good romantic relationship, by the way, can do the same thing. So you can get having an incredible physical practice of whatever sport you're doing can do the same thing. So I think all these things go together and all these things call on each other. So I completely agree, and I feel exactly the same way. The other thing I'll note, actually, my fencing coach told me this growing up, and he was the national coach for the Israeli national team for many years. And he said, in Israel, they've done a lot of studies on athletic performance. And one of the most famous studies, and you can look this up, is on the effect of sex on performance for female athletes and male athletes. And the funny correlation is that for female athletes, the data is pretty strong. And not for everybody. Look, everybody's different. But in general, having regular sex increases your performance. And there's a few theories around that. It's that it increases your testosterone. It also, the context in which you have sex matters. But you're usually having sex in a context with somebody you feel safe. So that makes you feel safe and grounded. And it gives you all of this kind of extra energy. Interestingly, for male athletes, having sex close to a major sporting event was found to generally decrease their performance.
I think that's why Jake Paul withholds his release, I guess, before he fights.
Yeah, but this is extremely common. Like this is extremely well studied. This is common among lots of athletes, lots of male athletes. In fact, my fencing coach, he was telling me, because he grew up in the Soviet Union, he said, oh yeah, what they would do is they'll literally take their male athletes and they would take them to, like, I don't know, Siberia or something for 2 weeks and no wives, nothing, like couldn't do anything. In Japan, they're even more rigid. They're like, don't masturbate, don't ejaculate. So in Russia, they were a little bit more relaxed, I think. But this is extremely, extremely common. It's extremely well studied. And I think sex gives women energy. For men, sex expends energy. And it's good to expend energy. If you don't ever expend energy, it's got to go somewhere. So
yeah, exactly.
Both are healthy. But I think understanding how it fits in to you as a performer is really important.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm curious, on your journey, both this question applies to both areas, both your career in tech and then also in entrepreneurship and fencing. Have you ever had a female mentor? Have you ever had a female that has helped you kind of pave the way, think about things a certain way, put you on opportunity or deals, and actually made like a 0 to 1 difference in your success?
That's a really interesting question. The answer, if I'm being totally honest, the answer is no. Now, that doesn't mean I've had incredible mentors, by the way. Most of my mentors just happen to be men, but I have had one of our early clients in my lucid dreaming business. She absolutely acted as that. So yeah, I guess the answer is one. In general, most of my bosses or mentors have been men, and they've been extremely supportive of me. And I think I personally have never felt for a second that as a woman, I'm at any disadvantage. In fact, actually, I feel the opposite. I feel like as a woman, I have way more advantages. And it's up to me to put those into practice. And and part of this comes from when I was very young, a teenager. My two biggest male figures in my life were my fencing coach, who I mentioned earlier, and then my dad. And both of them told me extremely directly, explicitly, they both in different ways said, you know what? We think that women are smarter than men. Women are more capable than men. And women should go out there and be doing things. And I never, because I had kind of those examples early, I've just never felt it's a disadvantage. And so I've never felt the need specifically for a female mentor versus a male mentor. But yeah, I do want to call out my one client who really, put her reputation, together with ours, especially when we had no business experience in this area, and really vouched for us, and continues to always call us in and be a great resource for us. So yeah, not to discount women in any capacity here, just sharing my experience.
Totally. Yeah, I asked this question to a lot of women, and the common answer is no. So
I think actually something that I think this is a misconception, is that if you're a woman, another woman will help you succeed. I have often found the opposite to be true. Not in every circumstance, I want to be really clear. But I think I've never seen that. I've just never seen in real life experience, I've never seen it work that way. So I think it's just important to, with all your mentors, to keep an open mind, and you can get something different from everybody.
Totally. Yeah. So final question, just want to wrap this up because I'd love to hear your perspectives on this. I love the way you can metabolize like what most people would view as being the underdog, in your career, also, as an athlete, and just reframe it as an advantage. What advice or mindset training would you have for women who are trying to have that reframe? Like for women who feel like they are struggling and it's an uphill battle in their careers or in areas of their life where they're in male-dominated spheres, like, yeah, how do you recommend reframing it to that advantage? And like, what advantages do you see in your journey?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think remember we were speaking earlier about constraints and how constraints actually help creativity. Anytime you have a constraint, positive or negative, it allows you an opportunity to come up with a more creative solution that you wouldn't come up with if you had no constraints. So let's say that you are, let's say one of your constraints is, this is common for most women, is, I want to have a family. I want to get married. I want to have kids. How am I going to have the same successful career if I have to take this time off, and how am I going to do that? Well, I have some female friends that's an ambition for them. That's clear. And so what they've thought about is, okay, how do I build a career around that? How do I come up with creative things I can do during that period of time that don't have the same demands as a 9-to-5, but that can make me more money or allow me to practice in a totally different area? So I think J.K. Rowling actually did this. I think she was like, she had a couple kids when she wrote Harry Potter. And it was the type of thing that she did it because she's like waiting for her kids and writing in the cafe. So I think that constraints are the biggest gift you have if you look at them that way. Another constraint is, this is just obvious. Like I have worked for Microsoft, and have a lot of visibility into the big 5 tech companies. Companies are desperate to hire women. VCs are desperate to give money to women. People are desperate to give opportunities to women. Not all people. Don't go with them. That's easy. But there are so many qualified, amazing people that want to help you because, one, they might have a diversity and inclusion obligation. But two, no man wants to walk into a room and everybody's a man.
Yeah.
Ask any man. Men want to walk into a room where there's both men and women. Everybody prefers that. Women prefer that too. So basically, understand that everybody has, I think, by and large, everybody has the same goals here. And I think the biggest challenge in the world in general, and you know this as a content creator, is how do you stand out? If you're a woman in a male-dominated space, you stand out immediately just because of your gender. That is such an advantage. Other people have to work at it in some way. A man has to come up with something different or do something special or wear a purple jacket or whatever. You can just walk in and talk to people. And there's so many different contrasts you can play with. And I think the real power of femininity is in your creativity. That's what feminine, at least, that's what it means to me. It's how do you create something? How do you create an environment that works for you? And so I think there's endless advantages to being a woman. And this applies, by the way, not just to being a woman. This applies to being any type of minority in a majority environment. To thinking differently in any way is such a gift.
Wow. Well, thank you for those perspectives. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Of course. This was so fun. Thank you, Vivi.
We'll have to do it again.
Yes, absolutely.